Well, good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome, and I do mean warm welcome to all of you. Let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Sister Peggy Albert, and I'm the president of Siena Heights University. It's so good for all of us to be together to celebrate Mike's life. And that is what he would want us to do, celebrate his life. So let's begin that celebration. Mike loved the singer Patsy Cline, and I just heard earlier that he also loved Elvis Presley. But I didn't know that when I was planning this service, so we got Patsy Cline. All right. So we'll now hear Isabel, one of our recent graduates, sing Just a Closer Walk with Thee, which Patsy Cline sang often. And I can assure you that Mike will be smiling down from heaven when he hears this song. Isabel?
Just a closer walk with
calling on you often, I think. Well, when I first came to Siena in 2006, seems like a long time ago now, right? Getting a little long in the tooth, I guess. I met Mike over lunch at the country club. Mike served on the board of trustees, and I was trying to get to know the board members. He shared his life story with me and assured me that if I ever had a bad day, he would be there for me. After I heard Mike's story, I wondered how I could ever have a bad day. I could share some funny stories with you about Mike and my experiences with him, but I'll save those for another time. But I'm sure some of you have heard the dog story. Marvin, you sure have. Over lunch, maybe. Mike was a gift to Sienna, but Sienna, I believe, was also a gift to Mike. After Mike's wife died, Lynn, in 2009, he was lost for a while. With so many people here today supporting him. However, once we started football, Mike found a new home. He became a valued coach, some of our players here today, for the football team. And I'll never forget the first homecoming game we played in O'Loughlin Stadium on Dawson Field. Mike led the team out. He was beaming. It was like a piece of heaven descended upon us, and we had a taste of a life that would come to all of us in our future. Mike enjoys that life now with his wife Lynn and all the loved ones that have gone before him. Of course, you have noticed on the field that Mike and Lynn Dawson Field. And when I was talking to Mike about this naming opportunity for the field, he said to me, Lynn would just love that because she could look down from heaven and see it. Now they both enjoy the view. Mike was a good man with a good heart. He served so many patients with care and concern, and many of his co-workers are here today to pay him tribute. He cared and expected the best from the young men who he coached on the football team. He could be tough, couldn't he, guys? But I also saw tears in his eyes as he shared experiences he had with the players and with his stepsons, John and Jay, and particularly his wife, Lynn. He also loved his brother Patrick and Pat's wife, Ellen, and all the nieces and nephews and friends, especially the Grays who are gathered with us today. Mike's spirit lives on in each one of us. So let's honor that spirit by celebrating his life today. Originally, John was going to say this prayer, but John is sick and wasn't able to make it today. He lives in California, and he's been down for about 4 days now. Not COVID, but just sick as a dog. So I felt badly that he couldn't be here, and so does he. So let us pray. Loving God, we begin this celebration of Mike's life. Let us first give you thanks for the many ways Mike entered into our lives as a stepfather, as a brother, brother-in-law, uncle, cousin, friend, doctor, colleague, board member, and coach. May the gifts he shared with us take root in our hearts so that Mike may live on in us and through us, and therefore enrich all our encounters with others. May good memories replace our sadness and laughter replace our tears. We ask this in the name of the God of us all. Amen. And now Maureen Dawson, Mike's niece, will share a reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Maureen?
Seeing the crowds, he went up on the hill. There he sat down and was joined by his disciples. He then began to speak. This is what he taught them. How happy are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy the gentle. They shall have the earth for their heritage. Happy those who mourn. They shall be comforted. Happy those who hunger and thirst for what is right. They shall be satisfied. Happy the merciful. They shall have mercy shown them. Happy the pure in heart. They shall see God. Happy the peacemakers. They shall be called sons and daughters of God. Happy those who are persecuted in the cause of right. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy are you when people abuse you and persecute you, and speak all kinds of calamity against you on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. This is how they persecuted the prophets before you.
I'd like to invite now Pat Dawson, Mike Dawson's brother, to share some of his thoughts with us. Pat?
Good morning. Welcome, friends and family, to the celebration of my brother's life. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Pat, and Mike often referred to me as my little brother Pat. I think that's because he thought he was bigger and stronger. Probably no other intention there. For those of you who do not know the family history, we grew up in Estonia, Michigan, and brother Richard Wesley was the oldest. Michael Howard was the middle child, and Howard Wesley was the baby. So as you can see, I got the leftovers in names. But as you would probably imagine, in a few other ways too, with those two around. At any rate, my mom was hoping for a girl and planned to call her Pat. Ironically, that's what I've been called my whole life, except in official quarters. I'd like to begin by taking a moment to introduce the family members here today for this celebration. My brother Dick's wife, Elaine, is here, along with her two children, Amanda and Andrew. Andrew is accompanied by his wife, Maria, and their two boys, Wesley and Teddy. My wife Ellen is here, along with my daughter Maureen and my son Mike Dawson, another Mike Dawson. In fact, there's a few Mike Dawsons here. On the cousin side, Judy Dawson is here with her son Mike Dawson, along with her two sisters, Peggy and Margaret. Thank you for coming. On the Williamson side, that's my mother's family. We're joined today by cousin Barry and his wife Trish, and their sons Matt and Joe. Matt is accompanied by his wife Andrea and their son Gus. Joe is accompanied by his wife Maria and their son Louis. It's important to mention that these cousins came from Tecumseh, just not far over the hill, and got roped into several mechanical challenges at the lake. In fact, most of the challenges there. Maybe only exceeded by Chad Perry, who's here, is a neighbor and has taken over for you since you moved to Holland. Anyway, we were also going to be joined today by John. As you heard, John's not doing well, sick that is, and his wife, Maria, was going to join us. I'm sorry, Shannon. Jay is here, and we're happy Jay's here, a graduate of Siena Heights. Well, we three boys are almost separated exactly by 3 years. We were all athletic in our own ways, but Mike was something special. He was a tough guy before he knew what the word meant. But there were a few kinks in his armor. I'm not supposed to share these kind of things, but I'm going to do it anyway. I remember a time when he was scheduled to go to Dr. Brundage, the dentist in Ann Arbor, when we were just kids. And he didn't like going to the dentist. I don't know if he got over that. I don't know if the dentist is here and he can testify to that. But he got up early that morning and he wrote a note and said, "Mom and Dad, I've run away from home because I'm not going to the dentist." And you thought, geez, that'd be a big deal, right? But he didn't count on the fact that it had snowed that night. So my father got up, looked out the back, followed the footsteps through the snow over to the Eastern Michigan dugout, where Mike was sitting there freezing. And anyway, that's the rest of the story. Mike finished junior high school at Ypsilanti, and he was already under the watchful eye of the coach at Ypsilanti High School, as was Mike Bass, who some of you may know, went on to start with both Michigan and the Washington Redskins. However, as fate would have it, our dad got a new job in the Chicago area with his paint company. So in the summer of '60, we moved from Ypsilanti to Arlington Heights, Illinois. So in September, he started as a sophomore, didn't know anybody in the school, and it wasn't long before he made his presence known through both his football acumen and wrestling and whatever, and academic, I might add. So he was, George Gaddis was one of his coaches, and I was able to go through and pick some of the newspapers from back in those days. And I found a quote from him that said, "As a football player, Mike responds well to coaching, is very conscientious, and I think it's an honor to have a boy like him in our program." I thought that was pretty nice testimony. He played end his sophomore year and then went to fullback his last 2 years. Ultimately, got all state honors in Illinois, and while he was courted by several service academies, which I'm prejudiced for, as was my brother, he decided to go to Vanderbilt University. He always thought he wanted to be a doctor and be involved in doing doctors that was around athletic endeavors. So he played 4 years at Vandy. Back in those days, he played both ways. He played both guard on offense and linebacker on defense. That wasn't rare then, but shows some of his stamina. I remember one story he told me about his first game against Alabama. And we know how powerful Alabama is now. Well, they were then too. So I guess he went down to the line on the first offensive session, and this big defensive tackle looked over and said, "Man, you're gonna have a bad day." And according to Mike, he did. Anyway, Mike did very well at Vanderbilt and was able to go to the University of Michigan in med school. And while there, he met Lynn. And I happened to, and they were dating for a while, and I'm getting ready to deploy over to the Western Pacific. And he knew I was going to Hong Kong. He says, "Pat, I want you to buy me a diamond ring in Hong Kong for Lynn." So I did. However, by the time I got back, or sometime after that, they had broken up. So, but I'll come back to Lynn later. So Mike finished med school and he went to Vanderbilt for his internship in orthopedics. Later went to the Cleveland Clinic, which is a renowned clinic for orthopedics. But he had deferred his military service back in those days. The draft was a big deal. And under the Berry Plan, he became a major in the U.S. Army in 1977 and reported for duty at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Ironically, Ellen and I were living in Athens, Georgia, stationed there. So we got to spend some quality time with him during our 6 or 7 months down there. But after that, whenever Mike would come up to Michigan, because we always come here in the summer, it wasn't unusual for him to get a call that there was a plane waiting for him to take flying back down because either the general or the general's wife had some sort of orthopedic issue. He completed his Army service in 1980 and decided to come to Adrian and open his own practice. About that time, he met Gary Gray, who had a physical therapy practice in the same building, I believe, right? Well, those two became long and strong friends, as did Lynn and Cindy later on. But they were very competitive. It didn't matter whether it was golf, basketball, you name it. They were, I don't know if you ever did tennis. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, they did that too. But along the way, Mike got very involved in Adrian High School as a team doc. And I'm sure, not just for football, but probably for other sports that I'm not aware of. Then he got involved with Gary's Free to Play initiative, where he holds those camps for the youth in the summer. And Mike loved and just told me how proud he was to go there and meet the kids and tell them what they can or might do with their athletic career. And he really enjoyed that. He also enjoyed golf. Now, if you ever played golf with him, maybe there are a few people, I talked about it earlier, you'd be standing there in the middle of the fairway and you'd look around and Mike's gone. You don't know where he is. So you stand there about 5 minutes, the people behind you are getting a little upset, and all of a sudden he comes out of the woods with tree trim, trees, things on him, with 3 or 4 golf balls that he wants to recycle. Well, let me tell you, he had a ton of them, and I mean that literally. His rivals. The wind's here. That's not important. Okay. So I think I'm coming to. Yeah, okay, I'm back. So for those of you who knew Mike well, and Sister Peg touched on this, he had his share of unlucky and tragic accidents along the way. In 1991, when he lost his arm in a farming accident, the people of Adrian, particularly doctors and other friends from the country club, whatever, really rallied around him and helped him back to his practice. And years or so later, after this was going on, he was, going through a pensive time, and he decided to call Lynn. And they reconnected, and in 1995, they married. And that's when John and Jay joined our family. And that was a marvelous day. And so Lynn came to Adrian and met Cindy, and I think they became kindred spirits very quickly. And she actually opened a retail store downtown, got heavily involved in a number of the things here. But she was an incredible addition to the Dawson family and the Williamson family. My wife, Ellen, and cousin Trish considered her a sister. They would go off on shopping trips together and antiques, and there's stories I can't tell you about with regard to that. So maybe not. But tragically, in 2009, Lynn died of cancer. And as Sister Peg said, that dealt him a terrible blow. And while in the past he'd always seemed to be able to bounce back from this thing, this one took a much larger toll on him. And I think that's where the Siena Heights story is so wonderful, because through his involvement on the board and then with the football team and building the stadium or the fitness center or whatever, he found a new reason for being. And Sister Peg wasn't really excited about having this on this hot day in August, but it never bothered Mike to be out there with the team on a hot day in August, so we decided to go forward with it. So that was going well, and then all of a sudden he had another setback, and that was in August of 2019, when he was right on this football field during a practice, got distracted and ended up with a broken hip. So here he goes again. He was back in the hospital, and we got him into a rehab place for a while so he'd be able to go home and be safe. And I came up to visit him, and he said, "I want you to let me take you driving. I need to get out there and drive the Toyota because I don't want to have to rely on anybody." Sure enough. So he's sitting there trying to edge his way into that seat and drove off. It was great. Finally, I want to acknowledge all the wonderful people of Adrian who've helped support him in so many ways over the years. I could name, and I've named a few already, but surely I would admit somebody who had a significant impact on his life and well-being. He cared very much for you, and it was kind of evident because every time we went out to dinner, somebody would come by and say, "Hey, thanks, Doc, for my elbow or my knee or my arm or whatever." So he was well known around the town. He also cared very much for Siena Heights and Sister Peg. Sister Peg, I have to tell you, our family owes you a huge source of gratitude for your taking him to dinner, getting him out, getting him involved in all these wonderful programs, and made his life fulfilled. Thank you. As a family, so as a big football fan, he loved it. He's got his name on this field, and the day they dedicated that, as she said, he went out and looked up to the husbands. The story he told me was he looked up at Lynn and said, "She's looking down." So we wanted to hold this here today because they're both looking down. So thanks, Mike, for the memories. Thank you.
And now Gary Gray will speak on his thoughts of Mike, and I'm sure he'll share some family thoughts as well, Cindy, because you and Gary have been such a vital part of Mike's life. Thank you so much.
Well, this is awesome seeing everybody. Thanks for coming. It's a joy just to get everybody together and reminisce and talk about somebody that we all were touched by and all were loved. Pat just did a great job. That was wonderful. It was a great tribute to your brother, and I know how much your brother was proud of you as well. So thank you so for doing that. And or Sister Peg, I don't think I can even add more to what Pat said, what this university has meant to him, and hopefully I can convey that a little bit in my talk. But you basically saved his life, and you meant the world to him. So thanks for coming. This is great. It's kind of fun. It was interesting. I shared this with Coach Sandifer, and he got a big laugh out of it because when they asked me to speak, of course, I was very honored to be able to speak. I think I probably was the closest to Mike of anybody. He impacted my life more than I think anybody has. And so just to be able to get up and share some memories of him, for me, is a huge privilege. And Pat was kind enough to call a couple weeks ago and say, "Hey, we are going to have it outside." And I go, "Yeah, that's going to be great. We'll be looking at the field." And he said, "Well, we kind of got together and decided that those who were making comments, we probably should limit it because it's going to be quite hot." And he was surprised by my answer, I think, because I said, "No, I don't think that's going to happen." So I think we negotiated, I'm making this part up, but I said if it's over 90 degrees, I'm gonna go 5 minutes. 80 to 90, I'll probably go 10. Under 80, I'm gonna have at it. And if you wanna check your phones right now, right under the weather app, it will say, have at it. Okay, so I'm gonna have at it. Rarely do you get an opportunity to honor somebody that just made an impact. So if you feel like you need to get up and stretch or move or go potty, please do, because you're gonna have to hang on for a second, just a little bit. Great job. Again, Pat, just kind of talking about a lot of people who really impacted Mike's life. There were 3 people near the end of his life, Noah Bowl and Chad Perry and Cindy Lydell, that were really with him all the time. They did all kinds of things for him that we didn't really even know, but they would show up and check on him and help him in the house chores and just be there and be a great neighbor. And since Mike's death, I got to even know them better, so that was a blessing. So I just wanted to make sure we thank them. I'll thank the coaches here at Siena Heights in a little bit, but athletes, thanks for showing up. It means a lot. Sometimes all you gotta do is show up. You don't have to say something, you don't have to, come up with something real intelligent. You'd be surprised just what showing up means. And Mike was a show-up guy. He didn't have to talk a lot. When he showed up, and you knew he was there. And so I know how proud he was of you all. And so thank you for the opportunity to kind of chit-chat a little bit. We all kind of reminisce, I think, a little bit when you first meet somebody. What was your first experience with Mike? Some of you was as a patient. You were in pain, and all of a sudden this guy's on your bedside and kind of helping you out. Mine was in 1980 when we were recruiting the orthopedic surgeon for our town here. We didn't have one. During those previous 4 years, I was kind of the orthopod. As a physical therapist, I got to kind of decide if people needed surgery or not. And well, when Mike showed up, we met at the country club first time. He stood up, very intimidating, 6'2", 225 pounds, solid granite, kind of looked at me and walked over and he shook my hand. How many have had a Mike Dawson handshake? Not only did he shake my hand, but he held it and he looked me in the eye and he says, so am I understanding that you think you're the orthopod here in town, huh? I go, no, sir. I said, I am a physical therapist and I am here to serve you. He's still squeezing my hand. Okay, you gotta really understand it. So I'm just going, this is pretty impressive. This is an amazing handshake. So our love affair began right then. It was one of these where I said, no, I'm here to serve you, and it's an honor to have you in our town. Little did I know the impact he would make on our town and me and my family and friends. I had no idea. I had a pretty close idea what was going to happen because within a week, he had come down to the physical therapy clinic where I was the director and chewed my butt out. I mean, not just a little chew, it is a big chew. In fact, I was looking for my butt to see how much was left. I apparently did not follow the instructions that he wanted for a patient, a bedside patient. I can't remember what I did or didn't do. All I know is I done bad. And he chewed me. And I was intimidated. I was like, wow, this guy's serious. What was even more impressive is a couple hours later, he came down and literally apologized and gave me a hug. And I go, wow, this is impressive. I've never been chewed out that much by somebody who then just made me feel so good. And I remember going home and telling my wife, I said, I think I met a lion and a lamb. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, I'm not sure, but I've met I think our new orthopod's a lion and a lamb. And so she kind of smiled, but I can tell you, he was a lion and a lamb. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to say that. Over 42 years, we developed a friendship that's impossible to describe. He impacted my life, my wife's life, my son's lives, and it's just, it's hard to describe. I'm not sure Mike had a bigger fan than my wife. In fact, I know she didn't have a bigger fan than my wife. She kind of worshiped the ground he walked on, and I think because she knew how much he meant to me and how much he meant to our family. And we would have him over for every event we possibly could, and she'd always have a basket for him, and he'd always write a nice handwritten note back to him, and so it's just an honor for us today. Today is our, believe it or not, 45th wedding anniversary, and I can't think of a better way, thank you, a better way to serve it than just to celebrating our friend Mike. I just can't think of a better way. He impacted my sons a lot. One of the things I realized early on is that it does take a village to raise a family. And I was smart enough to surround my sons with some amazing men. The Fred Smiths of the world, Coach Sandefers of the world, the Dave Taverios of the world, the people that just would show up, the Jim Browns of the world, and of course the Mike Dawsons of the world. One of the things I had the privilege of doing is going down and attending Major League Baseball spring training with some teams as a consultant. And I would take Mike with me, mostly just so he could hang out with Brad and Doug. And man, was that a joy. To kind of get him away from everything and just kind of go down there and hey, play catch. I don't know, the Field of Dreams, if you saw that game a couple days ago. Just that kind of brought back those kind of memories, and we played catch, and it was awesome. And Mike was very upset that my sons did not know the presidents. We had lunch together once down at spring training, and he asked what the presidents, and my two sons just kind of looked at him dull, and he's very, very disappointed in my two sons. But you could tell that he was very proud of my kids. He would show up to the games, and he would be there for them, and he showed him toughness. But he also showed him how to be gentle as well. So I'm very thankful that he impacted me and my wife and my sons the way he did. Most of you know, if you're around here, a typical day for Mike was getting up at about 6, doing the farm chores, sneaking in, doing hospital rounds, going to surgery suite, getting as many surgeries in as he can. Then, a lot of you didn't know, but for about 10 years, we did a 6-mile run every noontime. A bunch of us got together and ran 6 miles, and he would always go as hard as he possibly could every time, never would loaf. Come back, do 1 to 6 office hours with his amazing staff. Then we'd play softball or tennis. We did play tennis. He beat me in that too. We played basketball. He just was, as you could tell, he just great at everything. But a joy to be with and so competitive. Mike, without a doubt, showed strength in his entire body, but his hands were incredible. And I got for a while to be a surgical assistant with him. What that simply means is he needed an extra hand in the surgery suite. And I got to see those strong hands transform into these things of magic. Literally, where these hands would become soft and moldable and literally heal people's bodies, put new body parts in, and with sewing in just an exquisite way. And it was like, wow, how can you have that tough of hands, but be that gentle at the same time? It was a paradox, certainly to me, but it was an impressive paradox. Mike definitely was a team player. Those of us who got to play basketball with him, a lot of us in this room did, in the stands did. But he didn't want to score, he wanted to set picks. And that shows a team player. He didn't care about scoring, but man, if you didn't set your man up for a good pick, he was upset. Come on, run him by me, kind of run by me. I don't know if it was a pick or not, but Coach Fred Smith and I and Coach Coach Dawson were playing in Blissfield. And some guy was just bugging the crap out of us. And somehow Mike set this guy up for a pick, and not only set a pick, but knocked him out. Not down, out. I mean, and so Mike was still staring at him, and we had to back him off. I said, Mike, he's out. You know, he's not going to get up and fight you. You know, he's going for the count. And he's pretty happy with that. You know, he just loves setting picks. But as competitive as he was the funniest guy after basketball games to go have a beer with. I mean, you can imagine the stories he told us. And it turns out most of the stories were true. That's what's kind of neat when you kind of, I'm not sure about that one. But then you hear it from somebody else and go, wow, that's pretty impressive. He did that. And I think we probably will use some discernment on what stories we can say, what stories we can't say. So that's pretty good. We all have Doc Dawson stories. You should have told the story, because if it comes from me, it's going to be a little different about the puppy dog, but that's okay.
Go ahead.
But one of my favorite stories is Dr. Dawson and I became scuba certified together. And that was fun, except our checkout dive was in the Clark Lake, which is about 6 feet deep, and you couldn't see where you're going. So it wasn't really like scuba diving, you know, like 6 feet down, and it wasn't what we romantically thought scuba diving would be. So we decided we'd go down to the Cayman Islands. And we went down to the Cayman Islands and took a friend with us, a gentleman by the name of Paul Bodenbach. And basically scuba dived. Well, the first time we scuba dived, you could see Mike, he was pretty excited. And when Mike gets excited, you just gotta look out. And in scuba dive, of course, what they do is they match you up. So I became his partner. So little did I know that was gonna be a challenge the first time. And Paul got to partner with somebody else. And when you're in a scuba boat, the dive master basically gives you the rules. Hey, listen, we're only going to dive this much time. When you have this much area, I want you to come up. Our ceiling is going to be 60 feet, which simply means that's as far down as we want you to go. It's not safe to go any further. Well, you can imagine what Mike did. He got those flippers on, and with those strong legs, he took off, and I had to follow him. We hit 40 feet, we hit 60 feet, we hit 80 feet, we hit 100 feet, we hit 120 feet. By that time, it was like, man, I'm not sure I can catch him. And I finally got down there, but I noticed he had a lot of bubbles come out of him. A lot more bubbles than everybody else. I'm thinking, well, I know one of the things we're supposed to do is share how much air we have left. So I tried to explain to him how much air I had left, and when he looked at his gauge and started doing that, I knew we had a problem, because he at 120 feet was out of air. So they teach you that might happen, probably not, but it might happen, and so you learn how to buddy breathe. And they also teach you that the person who loses air is going to grab your regulator, because they see air coming out of here, so they're not going to look for your accessory. Sure enough, he grabs my regulator, and at 120 feet, we have to calm each other down and going, okay, this is better than Clark Lake at 6 feet. You know, this is definitely 120 feet, and we get to buddy breathe on the way up. And I like that story so much that I shared it with Johnny Mack earlier this week, and I said, but I wanted to have a point to it. And he goes, oh, that's probably the best story for the point that I think you should make. And I go, what's that? He goes, well, anytime I saw Dr. Dawson walk in the institute here, your chest would pop out. And he breathed air into you all the time. I go, wow, that's it. I'm stealing that. As we say, that'll preach. Because he breathed air into my life. He breathed air into a lot of our lives. And so we not only got the buddy breathe from 120 feet up, but the rest of our lives, he breathed air into my life. One of the gentlemen that was with us on that trip regrettably couldn't be here, and he asked me if I could read this real quick, and I apologize for taking time, but I told him I would. And you'll like it, because this is one of Mike's dearest friends, Paul Bodenbach, who was the first athletic trainer here at CNH University. Became a good friend of all of ours. Regretfully, I cannot be with you today to celebrate the life of Dr. Mike Dawson. As Sienna's first athletic trainer, it's important for me to establish a team of medical experts to care for our student athletes. Dr. Dawson was introduced to Sienna as one of those experts. He committed his professional skills in exchange for the use of Sienna's gym so his City League basketball team would have a place to practice. Mike's commitment to Sienna grew from there. He became a part of Sienna's family, and Sienna eventually became a part of his. Mike conducted his life in a straightforward, no-nonsense manner. He exhibited mental and physical toughness throughout all of his pursuits. That toughness was offset by the compassion that he showed his patients and close friends. My relationship with Mike began as a professional colleague and soon became one of strong friendship. Our relationship moved further than our professions as we enjoyed playing numerous sports together, scuba trips, and generally each other's company. Although I've not been a resident of Adrian for many years, our friendship has remained intact. During my visits to Adrian, I always enjoyed spending time with him. One visit in particular comes to mind as Mike burst into the room and yelled, "Bodie, they're gonna let me coach football at CNIs." He couldn't have been happier to have the opportunity to coach the game that he loved and at the institution that had grown to mean so much to him. Mike's philanthropic commitment to Sienna is well illustrated with, among other things, the donation to the football field he and his lovely wife, Lynn, donated. Sienna became a family to Mike. He was proud to serve on its board of trustees, be a coach, and certainly a member of its athletic Hall of Fame. Sienna will miss Dr. Dawson as a member of their family, and Paulie adds this, I will miss Dr. Dawson as a friend. And with this note, I do want to emphasize to Fred and Coach Lyle and to Coach Cohn and all your assistants how much you guys meant to Mike. You saved his life. You literally did. I mentioned that to many times. The joy you brought just allowing him to be here, being part of the team, and just allowing him to be him. One of my frustrations, and I'll talk about that in just a second, is that some of these guys didn't get to see the tough Mike. But guess what? You did get to see the tough Mike. You saw after he had to go through everything he went through that he still showed up. He still wanted to be a part of your lives. So it's, I'm just thankful for you guys, for everything that you did for him. You did a lot. We all have defining moments in our life. Sometimes it's a big defining moment. Sometimes it's a bunch of little defining moments, but we all have them. Mike had one of those. Is the day he lost his arm. Is the defining moment. You had the most talented surgeon who who utilizes his hands to create environments for healing, who all of a sudden his arm was taken from him. I was blessed because on his way to the hospital, he asked the EMTs to give me a call, and I got there about the same time he got there. He's on the gurney. He had a jean jacket on, and strangely enough, the jean jacket didn't look tasseled at all. It kind of was confusing because he looked at me and called me G a lot. He says, G, I lost my arm. And I looked at him and I said, no, you didn't. He goes, G, I lost my arm. And I'm looking at this coat jacket that it didn't have anything wrong with it. And I go, Mike, I said, you look pretty good. G, I lost my arm. He has no medicine at this time. And so finally I asked the nurse, I said, can you just cut his coat off for us real quick? And she cut the left arm off first. And that's when I saw his mangled arm, ripped, around 360 degrees, spaghetti basically. And I looked at Mike and I said, Mike, you lost your arm. Of course, he said, I told you so. You know, he wanted to get that in. And I you know, when things happen to you personally, it's hard, but sometimes it's harder when it happens to your friends, you know, and when you see that. So they life flighted him to Ann Arbor. I got there a little bit after that, was able to see him before he went into surgery to get it cleaned up. I was sitting at his bedside when he got out of surgery, and he finally came to about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was on his left side, and he lost his left arm. And he looked at me and he says, G, he goes, what's the next phase? I said, Mike, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, yeah, no, what's the next phase? And I said, I'm sorry, I really don't know what you're talking about. And he got a little upset with me. He goes, what's the next phase? I said, Mike, really, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, well, when people have a loss, we go through phases. And he says, the first phase is denial. And he looked down and he says, I certainly can't deny that I don't have an arm now. So what's the next phase? And I sat there and I go, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Because we know that we go through this 5 stages of grief. Sometimes we go through it fairly slowly. Sometimes we go through it fairly quickly. He went through it very quickly. The denial, the anger, never had anger, never went through the bargaining phase. Believe it or not, relatively speaking, never went through the depression phase. And he accepted it within nanoseconds. Claudia LeBar and Cindy and Jay and I had the opportunity to spend a couple hours just reminiscing last night. And Claudia said it best, hey, he showed up after 6 weeks of losing his arm back as an orthopedic surgeon. Think about that. 6 weeks after you lose your arm, you show back up, smile on your face, and you say, I'm here to help you. Don't worry about me. I'm here to help you. Oh my goodness. That's incredible. I know that Mike really loved the people that he worked with. I see a lot of them here, and what an honor that you would show up as well. But I know Claudia said it best when Mike was kind of doubting, hey, he actually asked us, do people think a little less of me because I only have one arm? Am I less of a man? And Claudia looked him dead in the eye and said exactly what should have been said. Mike, you're more of a man with one arm than most men are with 2 arms. I don't think she could have said it better. Just when you shared that with me, Claudia, that meant a lot to me. As he just as tough as Mike was with 2 arms, I guarantee he was tougher with 1 arm. And to know what he was able to then do, we played more tennis. He actually played more golf. His left arm didn't get in the way, so his golf swing instantly got better. Because he liked to set picks, that didn't influence anything. In fact, sometimes he would stick his stump right in your ear if he was going to pick you, just to knock you out a little bit. So that was kind of fun. I remember we had a game where we went out and Mike and 3 of us showed up, and we only had 5 guys there. Mike this time only has 1 arm. And the guys we were playing were a little bit younger. In fact, they were so much younger, I kind of said, whoa, before we get started, can we go around and just say everybody's age? Well, we figured out our average age for our team at that time was 55. The average team age we were playing was 22. And so I'm thinking, okay, we'll see how this goes. And you could tell they were cocky, and we tried to have some degree of humility. But you could just see the fire in Mike's eyes, like, I don't care how old you are. You know, we're going to see. Well, as you can imagine, I wouldn't be telling this story unless it had a happily ever after to it. It was one of those games where everything we did wrong turned out right, and everything they did right turned out wrong. And by halftime, we smelled victory. We can sense it. And when we got into the third quarter, the refs got into the experience of it all because they started whining. And I found out, well, no, I didn't. I found out, no, I still haven't. Found out that whining does not help with the refs. So these guys started whining, so the refs started calling crazy fouls on them, and absolutely no fouls on us. We won, and I can still see the gleam in Mike's eye. I don't know if you can recall this look here when he takes that right arm and just does this. Sometimes if he does this is good, but if he does that and shivers you and not shiver on your butt, that's bad. He would do that every once in a while, but he did this. He was so happy. And I can still remember how good the beer tasted that evening. I'd like to real quick, again, take just a pinch to share some words from John Wing. John became a very trusted friend and a part of Mike's team, so to speak. He wrote a note to his employees, to his team. And I was just touched by it, and I asked him if I could read it. And so thanks, John, for not only being there for him, but knowing how much you prayed for him and knowing how much you meant to him. And so after he tells the story about Mike going one-on-one with his mom, in which case his mom won, that particular one, John says this: after this, the journey of our friendship included him diagnosing the knee injury in my senior year of high school. I was a slow guy on the track team. Lots of Michigan football and basketball, frequent investment discussions, and regular visits to his compound, love that name, in Michigan to visit. With him, Lynn, and his ever-present St. Bernards. Mike owned about 5 or 6 over the years, including Barkley Jr., who is now being put up for adoption. Now, Barkley was put up for adoption, but I don't know if Steve's here, but Steve came to the win there and adopted Barkley Jr., and we're so thankful for that. Just to see somebody just show up and say, I'll take great care of that dog. We just wanted to make sure he had great care, how much Mike loved him. As you can see from the obituary, John goes on, Mike lived quite a life. He accomplished much, but suffered greatly, including more than one near-death event that significantly altered his life. He also lost the love of his life, Lynn, to cancer in 2009. However, the time they shared together was romance for the record books. They had dated while Mike was in medical school at Michigan in the 70s and then reunited in their 50s and got married. And that's about as romantic as it gets, doesn't it? And I know, and I asked Cindy about this, I said, how do we describe what happened during that special time when they fell in love again and they got married, and it was just a special time? And Cindy goes, well, that's easy. Mike would say almost every week, I won the jackpot. That was his favorite phrase. Anytime Lynn's name would come up, he goes, man, I won the jackpot. And guess what? Mike won the jackpot. He certainly did. The other thing that at that time, and still even up until Mike passed away, that impressed me, is that Mike would always refer to John and Jay as his sons, not his stepsons. These are my sons. Immediately, those are my sons. And he demonstrated then, and even demonstrating now, that he meant that. And what a joy that was. I know Mike had a sibling rivalry with his two sons, with his two brothers, and that was fun to kind of hear. I didn't kind of hear from it because he downplayed his toughness. Okay, this guy's tough too, and Richard was extremely tough as well. But what I enjoyed mostly is when he would talk about him, he would talk with such admiration about his brothers. That meant a lot to me. He was just somebody that stood up and would talk about what Richard was able to accomplish in business. And I remember when you were awarded the Admiral Distinguished Award, he called me and he says, here's what happened. And he was proud as could be. And man, that speaks volumes. When you know you go nose to nose with your brothers most of your life, but then when it's time to really recognize how much they meant to him, and Mike stood up for that. It's just, I don't know, just that influenced me greatly. As you know, Mike loved his dogs. I've got one quick dog story that doesn't include Sister Peg, but then I'll sneak the Sister Peg story in there because she actually, well, you'll hear why I'm a little jealous. He had a dog also named Spud. Anybody remember Spud? Okay, Spud wasn't the handsome St. Bernard. Spud was the one that somehow got blessed with, it wasn't just right, okay? And he was so cute, he was ugly. And so we found out that they were going to have an ugly dog contest in Adrian. So we got a hold of Mike, Doug and Brad and I, and said, Mike, Saturday, bring Spud to this place. They're going to have an ugly dog contest. And he lit up. He goes, oh, we'll win that. And I go, well, there's a lot of ugly dogs around here, but I think you got a good chance. Sure enough, he was late. All the dogs are lined up. The guy doing the judging is there, and he's kind of already, kind of doing like they do at dog shows. Move him down. This one's pretty ugly. This is pretty ugly. And I went up to him. I said, "You might want to wait a minute." And he goes, "No, we got to get this going right now." I said, No, you really might want to wait a minute. Well, he didn't wait. He started just getting ready to pick out third, second, and first. Okay, so he's just getting ready. Mike shows up with Spud. They get out. Spud was drooling, and Mike was drooling. It was just kind of this intriguing thing as they ran. Drool was coming out of both of their mouths, and the guy looked at me and goes, "Okay." And for second place, it was instant. And Mike, I think for a year or two, took that trophy everywhere. He was so proud. Look at me and my dog won. Because he knew it was kind of a team effort there. Barkley Sr. was a special dog. Very intelligent, very kind. And for a while, I was Barkley's boy toy. So I would go over there, and I don't know if I smelled just right, but Barkley would take advantage of me. And when a 165, 170-pound dog takes advantage of you, there's not much you can do. You can lay down and just relax and let it happen. But he called me one day, and he was laughing so hard he was out of breath. I mean, he was laughing so hard, and he says, "Well, you got replaced." I go, "What do you mean?" Sister Peg showed up, and Barkley loves her more than he loves you. And I said, "What?" Oh, and every time he told a story, he would laugh so hard he would lose his breath. We would start to laugh so hard he would lose his breath. And when you heard Mike laugh,
almost by that time.
oh yeah, the nice thing, I know how much Barkley loved you, but I know how much Mike loved you, and that's why it made this story even more special. Mike had an intelligent sensitivity that most of you are aware of. Very often, a couple weeks after something would happen, he'd ask me about it. "So, how was your mom? Or how was that person doing?" And like, "Wow, you're remembering that?" So now he's remembering it. He was reflecting upon it. He was contemplating on it. It's like, wow, with this guy being this busy, how could that happen? How could he be that sensitive to everything that's going on? But he definitely was. I think we all know Mike developed a passion for golf, and you said it best, golf balls. We got Coach Sandifer and I and Jim Olson, we got to a point where we would actually bring a couple golf balls of the same type when we played with Mike, and we'd give him the one, and we'd have the duplicate in our pocket. So that when he knocked that out of bounds, we would run out of bounds, pretend that we found it, and we'd bring it back so he wouldn't go and look for it. I mean, it was just a way to keep the game moving on. It was incredible. I remember one year after him losing his arm, we were playing golf. And I believe, and I can't remember this, but it was around 7th, 8th, or 9th hole, he was beating me. And I kind of started shaking my head, and he goes, looks at me and says, "What's wrong with you?" And I go, on one hand, I feel bad that you're beating me. I said, but on the other hand, I feel terrible that I just now realize you got one arm. I said, we played the whole couple hours, and it hasn't dawned on me that you're playing with one arm. And I kind of felt bad, and he looked at me dead in the eye, and he goes, but isn't that the goal? Wow. I don't want you to look at me as a gentleman with one arm. I want you to look at me as a competitor, as somebody who loves you, somebody who cares for you, somebody who will compete with you. Isn't that the goal? That was a big one. 4 weeks before his death, I got to play one-on-one with him in golf. That was a joy. That was a wonderful time. Mike and I got to play with him as well. Even a few months before that, which we just talked about, was a blessing. Mike was always pissed because he couldn't get up on hole number 2, which now is I think hole number 16. It's that hill, okay, that stupid hill. And I knew something special was going to happen because when he walked up there, he got the ball over the hill. And I saw this again. Man, I saw that. That was good to see. I mean, just like, I got it over the hill. He got it over the hill quite effectively. And it was a joy for me. I'd like to conclude with just sharing with you, a number of years ago, we were smart enough to start the Michael Dawson Toughness Award. We didn't wait till he died. We were smart enough to all get together and say, man, if we're going to honor somebody, let's honor him now. And we got a chance to honor him. We made this big, huge statue with his picture on it, and it's right by Hot Rock that, like you said, was so meaningful to him, and as meaningful Hot Rock was to him, he was more meaningful to Hot Rock, and it was just a special opportunity. And so finally, when we wanted him to get the first award, I said, Mike, you really need to come and talk to the kids. I'm frustrated that they don't really know you from the good old days. And I want you to share some of your toughness stories. I want you to share with them, basically, how you've gotten through your life. Well, believe it or not, he was kind of shy, Mike was. And he was very humble. Sometimes when you heard his stories, you didn't think he was humble, but he was a humble man. And so he didn't do a very good job explaining to the kids. I got them all under the tent, all listening really good. And Mike just kind of, you just kind of got to be tough. And no, Mike, you need to talk about the first time we went to Adrian High School football, and he volunteered all his time at the sideline. He would then go at halftime, check on the team, and we'd come back and on over at Maple Stadium, we'd play catch. And I can't embellish this enough. He could throw the football 70 yards. I remember when we came out a couple of years ago with Kirk Cousins, he was pissed because he still couldn't throw it 70 yards. And he explained to somebody that I could throw it 70 yards, and you could see the guy go, yeah, right, you can throw a football. He could throw a football 70 yards. I would catch it, run 20 yards back, and throw it back to him. He thought that was the funniest thing in the world. I'd have to catch it, run back, and he would just giggle. But I just wanted him to tell some stories about how tough he was, that he was all-state in football in high school, that he played both ways. Think about that, guys. Division I school against Alabama, you're playing both ways. That's tough. That's toughness. Okay, so he wouldn't do it. So I had to tell some stories, and I kind of finally had to interview him, and finally we kind of got to the point where, okay, let's summarize this thing. I said, Mike, do you have any words for the kids just to summarize everything? And Mike looked at the kids, and he says, yeah. He says, when you're with yourself and with your teammates, here's what you got to convey. Don't mess with me. Except he didn't use the word mess. All right, he used a different word. And the kids' eyes lit up. It was kind of cute. And so, okay, I think they got the message. Don't mess with me. In fact, he signed his things with "Don't mess with me," but he signed it DFWM. That was a hint to the word for you. And it was so sweet because I quickly had to backtrack and explain to the kids that sometimes words are used differently in different contexts. And in this case, he was talking about when you don't mess with your teammates and you don't mess with us, okay? Because we're together. And sometimes you use a different word to convey that, and Mike used a really good word here. Of course, you could see this one coming. That night, one of our first-year Hot Rockers went home, and his parents sat him down and said, how'd it go? Went great. What'd you do? Told us everything you do. What'd you learn? Well, a guy told us to, and he basically said, don't, and he used that word, mess with me. So Mom and Dad are saying, what did you say? He says, don't mess with me. That's what we learned today. And so the dad calls me up and said, hey, my son kind of expressed that he had a great time at Hot Rock, but somebody showed up. And I said, yeah, Dr. Dawson was there, and it was wonderful, and it was his first toughness award. And he goes, but my understanding is that you taught him the phrase, don't mess with me. I said, well, that's true. And he goes, we need more of that. Father said, we need more of that. I appreciate you taking my son under his wing and letting him know we need more of that. Man, that's kind of cool. You know how much someone impacts your life by how many times you laugh together, but you know really how they impact your life by how many times you cry together and hold each other. I kind of reflected over the week, which has been a blessing for me, that Mike and I held each other a lot. We cried a lot. We cried when mutual friends of ours died. When Charlene Larson, Gary Cruz that worked with me died. When Brad Mansfield and Bronsfield Mansfield died. When Chuck Schwartz died recently, when Bruce Stevens died. When Elliot Wright, one of our Hot Rock campers, you know how much that impacted me. I can remember him putting his strong arm around me and just telling me he loved me. And we cried. I can remember us holding each other when he lost his arm, and we cried. I can remember when he lost his mom, and we got to hold each other and cry. I remembered when he lost his dear brother Richard, and we held each other and we cried. And I remember when my mom passed away, and he held me, and we cried. And recently when Barkley Sr. passed away, we held each other and cried. And I'm just not sure I can express it any better than this, except for one last story. We were getting ready for a City League basketball game. This is at Drager. You have to have 5 people to show up or they'll call it a forfeit. We only had 4. Mike, again, was late. And so the referee, who for some reason didn't like me much, was there. And I thought for sure when 7 o'clock hit, he was going to call forfeit. And then we'd all have to go home. Because the refs still got paid and they didn't have to ref the game. But this ref, for some reason, looked at me and says, hey, I'm going to give you a few more minutes. I said, well, really? Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So another 5 or 10 minutes went by, and he kind of went to the other team, came back to me, says, the other team really wants to play. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes. I said, man, that's awful nice of you. I said, I appreciate that. And all of a sudden, Mike comes, and if you're a Drager, comes by the bleachers there, and he comes down. And he looked different. Man, he looked different to me. I said, did you get a haircut? New shoes? Something's going on here. He looks different. He comes flying down, comes running around. I'm over here. And he says, gee, yeah, we got to talk. I said, I know we got to talk, but we got to go play a game. Good, let's get in there and go. And he goes, no, we got to talk right now. I said, no, really, Mike, we got to go play a game. They've been nice enough to let us go. And he says, Jerry, we have to talk right now. And I said, well, what about? Well, a few weeks prior to that, he asked me about getting some counseling. And I said, well, I think it's a healthy thing to do. And I said, but I know this one pastor who's a really good counselor. I said, I don't know him personally, but I've heard he does just a wonderful job. And I said, when I need counseling, I'm going to probably go to this guy. I said, you might want to go to this guy. So apparently he had gone to him 2 or 3, 4 times, and he had been with him that evening. And when he got to me, he put his arms around me on the basketball court, and he starts crying, harder than I've ever heard him cry. I said, Mike, are you okay? And he says, I'm more than okay. I said, well, what's going on? And he goes, you know. I go, no, I don't, I'm sorry. He goes, come on, you know. He was upset at me. I go, no, I don't. He goes, you know. I go, Mike. He goes, I just accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I said, Mike, of course now I'm balling. He's balling. The ref's kind of going, what's going on here? But he sensed something special was going on. Now, I can't tell you whether we won or lost that game. I'm going to make the story good. We probably won, but it didn't matter. Because that evening when Mike and I went out for dinner together, it was a special time. So I'm going to leave you with a note that John McGuire wrote John and Jay just a little bit ago, which is kind of cool. I stole it, and so Johnny McGuire doesn't even know I stole it. So here it is. I wanted to let you both know how important the role Doc played free play, but also played on me personally. I feel honored that I got to know him, often the passenger of his one-arm driving expertise, to eat many lunches with him. He always ordered enough so that we'd have enough for the evening dinner as well. And also to cover for him so he could get out of the medical care facility after his hip surgery. I look forward to telling you that story. I love listening to his stories over each meal, as person after person would come up to thank him for the care he had given them or a family member in the past years, and that happened all the time. He was always so gracious, and although we always talked about being Dawson tough, I found him to be a gentle grizzly. I miss him. I think around death we focus on the end of life, but I wanted to let you both know what Doc thought. At one particular lunch, we randomly got on the subject of death. So I straight up and asked him what he thought happens after death. Now, I understand he knew as a pastor, and so he kind of made his remarks somewhat pastor-like. So what he said was so profound to me. He said, I don't know exactly, but I believe there is a heaven. I believe I will go there, and I believe it is because of Jesus that I will. So when I heard the heartbreaking news that Mike had died, I knew, based on his own confession, where he was, and he had simply crossed over from death to life. We're going to be with him again. And there's no greater peace and joy to know that. Thanks.
Thank you.
A little shorter here. Jay? Gary, first of all, thank you for all your stories and all your words. And I know how much Mike appreciated you, so thank you. Now, Jay, Mike's son is going to say a few words.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up and celebrating Mike's life. He meant a lot to the entire community.
me, and the community meant a lot to him. So we're here to just celebrate what he did. He changed my life. He's changed my mom's life. Changed my brother's life. It meant a lot to us when he was introduced to us back in 1993, 1994. I remember I was getting in, because him and my mom came to pick me up from school, from high school. I think I was a freshman, sophomore maybe. I'm getting ready. I see the car pull up. I was like, all right, come in. Get in the car, open the car door, and he's like, just move my arm over and you can just sit there. I was like, you don't have an arm. I didn't know this. So that's how I met Dr. Dawson. It was a fun, interesting way. But what he's done from there for my mom, my brother, myself, it's very important what role he played in our lives. He gave my mom a place to be after her kids decided to move out of the house, and she was able to move down here and be with someone she loved dearly, and we were able to do what we needed to do, and it was perfect because we come home and I saw a different part of life. My father was a businessman as well. He was a CEO, and he didn't do a lot of manual labor, and so when I got to the farm, I learned about manual labor. And I lasted about 30 minutes baling hay one day when I showed up in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops to try to do something, and that didn't work out that well. So I threw the white flag about 30 minutes in and said, thanks, but I'm out. But he was just a unique man, but he cared for all of us, cared for all of you, cared for all of you, especially cared for you football players up there. What you guys did for him after I graduated and moved out, and what Sister Peg's done, what Jim Lyle did, what Matt Cohn did, Rob Thornblade, his father, Jim Lyle, everyone, you gave him life again. After my mom died, it was really tough on him. It was tough on all of us, but it was really tough on him. And when I moved in, I could tell he was struggling. I was struggling. It wasn't easy on us. But when football came in, Sister Peg, when you were able to give him that, something in him that all of a sudden that football, he loves football. So being able to be a part of this football program, be a part of your lives, and kind of, in his own way, teach you what he was taught for football and just in life. I mean, he's the toughest guy I know. And, God gives a tough award for it, so he has to be pretty tough. But, he worked hard. He worked hard for the community, his patients, his players, his family. And I think at the end of everything, it was just, that's what meant the most to him, is being with his family, being, with his sons and his wife. And it was, very, he was a once in a million guy. I can't really explain that much, but my brother lived with him as well after his time in Vanderbilt, and he meant a lot to us. The farm kind of grew us up, I didn't know what manual labor was until I went to the farm. So, my dad was a corporate person, he did his thing, but Doc was kind of that father that I didn't really have growing up because my dad was busy out in the world selling things and, doing things. So he loved it in a different way, but Doc kind of gave you that down-to-earth love and care. And I appreciate it now even more looking back on it because it made me grow as a person. And I think the 5 years I lived with him, I learned a lot. And tough. It's tough days, but my brother did the same, lived there a few years, and so he just, it's one of those guys. He's once in a lifetime guy. But my brother sent me an email in the middle of the night last night, and it was a quote from a president. Of course, my brother's enamored with presidents just like Doc is. And so they were telling, he sent me a quote, and I'm going to read the quote. There are men and women who make the world better just by being the kind of people they are. They have the gift of kindness or courage or loyalty or integrity. It really matters very little whether they are behind the wheel of a tractor or running a business or bringing up a family. They teach the truth by living it. And that was from James Garfield. And I think that sums up Doc, and I think my brother summed it up very well. So let's celebrate Doc. Let's enjoy this day. It's a beautiful day here at Dawson Field, Laughlin Stadium. And just have fun, enjoy it, and remembering his life, because that's what he wants, everyone. Just enjoy it. And again, can't tell you how thankful we are to Siena Heights, to the football program, Jim Lyle, Matt Cohn. What you guys did for him after I left in 2013 to go on with my life. I mean, you read life into him again. I mean, he was always excited. I couldn't wait to go to practice. It just gave him something to live for. So we thank you. We thank everyone here. We love you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Your dad was very proud of you, and I'll never forget when you graduated. He fulfilled Lynn's promise.
Yep.
Get him through school.
Thank you.
Matt Cohen, our head football coach, will share a few thoughts about what Mike meant to him and the team. Matt?
I'd like to start by just thanking Pat, Gary, and Jay for telling some more stories on Doc's life. I'm so happy that our players got to know more about Doc and learn more about Doc and everything that he stood for. And particularly, Gary, your final comments. That just sums it up right there. You don't really want to follow something like that. So thank you very much for sharing that. It's truly an honor and a privilege to represent everyone who's been a part of our football program and say a couple remarks about Doc Dawson. If you walk through our campus, you'll see some banners still up from when we celebrated our centennial in 2019-2020 school year, and they all read the word legacy on those banners. And if you walk on our campus, you can certainly see the physical legacy that Doc Dawson has left. Beautiful field behind us with Doc and Lynn's name on it. If you enter the field house, you'll see the Dawson Fitness Center where a lot of our athletes train. But more importantly, I think from listening to these previous speakers, it's a whole lot deeper than that. Doc was a catalyst that helped brought the football program here to Siena Heights. And well over hundreds and hundreds of young men got to come here, earn their degrees, develop lifelong relationships, meet their wives, stand up in one another's weddings, be aligned with the mission of Siena Heights, and one day have an opportunity to have their kids play together and grow up together. That is a legacy. And that will go on forever. It was mentioned how much Doc loved football. He loved football. Particularly defensive players, because they're the ones that got to hit. And Doc loved big hits, man. That's all he ever talked about. That's all we wanted to see at practice. It was very important that for our staff that his legacy would carry on within our football program. Would like to invite his dear friend, Coach Bolt, down. Our staff got together and we wanted to honor Doc, and long after all of us leave this program and go on, and all these players graduate and go on with their lives, we wanted to make sure that people knew about Doc Dawson and what he did for our football program. So our staff is created. Last year we had the first recipient, the Dr. Mike Dawson Battered Hat Award. It is given out, it's voted out by our players. Thank you, Coach Bolt. It's voted on by our players, and it is given out to the hardest hitting player on our football team. Fits Doc perfectly to a T. When I was asked to speak, I was told to keep this talk under 2 minutes, so I timed it at 1 minute 59 seconds. All right, certainly want to obey by my boss's rules here. All right. So finally, on behalf of anyone who's ever been associated with our program, we just want to thank you, Doc. We know you're looking down on us. Thank you for everything you did for us. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you.
A shout out to Jim Lyle over there too, Jim, who started our football program, and Doc was a part of that program right from the beginning.
Yep.
So thanks, Jim and Matt. Okay, now, I'm gonna ask, Mike Dawson, Mike's nephew, and Amanda Dawson to come up and pray our prayers of petition.
Loving God, we, your children, know with great assurance that you hear our every prayer, even before each is spoken. Today, we ask you to answer our prayers and give us the grace that we need to live your gospel and celebrate the life of Mike. We ask you this through Jesus, your Son. Amen.
The response to each prayer petition is, Lord, hear our prayer. For Mike, husband, stepfather, son, brother, and friend, that he may know the fullness of eternal life with his God and loved ones, we pray.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For John and Jay, Patrick and Ellen, and all of Mike's family members, that they will all know God's healing love and peace that comes in knowing that Mike now rests in the arms of God, we pray. Lord, hear our prayer. For all of Mike's friends who were so supportive of Mike in so many ways, may they be blessed abundantly for their friendship, love, and goodness, we pray. Lord,
hear our prayer.
For Sienna Heights, Mike's other home, especially for the Board of Trustees and the football team, that they may imitate Mike's goodness and generosity, we pray. Lord, hear our prayer. For all of our loved ones who may have gone before us, especially Lynn, Mike's wife, and Richard, Mike's brother, that they may know God's everlasting love and tenderness, we pray. Lord, hear our prayer.
Well, on behalf of all of us gathered here today, I'd like to extend our condolences to John and Jay, Patrick and Ellen, and all the family members who gathered today for this Mike celebration. Mike also had many good friends, and we offer our sympathy to you as well, because you walked with him along his journey. We continue to miss him here at Sienna. His role as a board member for 21 years and a football coach since the team's inception will surely be missed. Please know that the Sienna Heights community will carry all of you in prayer as we continue to feel the loss of Mike. The final prayer will be led by Andrew, Mike's nephew.
Let us pray. God be with us as we continue to remember the great gift you gave us in your Son, Mike. We thank you for his persevering spirit and his generous heart. May his spirit continue to live within us and among us. We ask this in the name of Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Now, I have mixed emotions about this. At the family's request, though, and I like to honor family requests, we will sing Hail to the Victors, since Mike and Lynn were graduates of the University of Michigan. However, he was also a Sienna Saint, and he now joins Lynn, so we have two saints in heaven now looking down on us today. Two Wolverines, two saints. It doesn't get much better than that. So after we sing Hail to the Victors, I apologize to Spartan fans. Hail to the Victors. After we sing that, please join us for a luncheon at the Spencer Performing Arts Center. Some of our staff will help lead you over there. And I thank you all for coming to share in this special day remembering Mike. And I pray that God continue to bless each and every one of you. Thank you.